Right. Okay, and we are on. I want to welcome you to the next episode of the Gospel of Cleasy. This is your boy D Freezy, aka Cleasy for Sheezy. Tonight we have a special guest with us. Um, I know her from doing being on the block with Brother Paul, and we met through him. I do know that she was on the Durham School Board at one point, and we'll get into um, why why she what she did there and why she may no longer be there. But I will let her introduce herself more thoroughly. But please welcome to the show, Alexandra Valladares. Alexandra, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yep. So tell the viewers or listeners about your background. Are you are I don't know much about your background other than I know you were on the school board. So tell us about where you are, who you are, and where you come from.
Okay. Well, my name is Alexandra Valladares, and I've been living in Durham for many decades. I graduated from Hillside High School, but I was actually born in Honduras, Tegucigalpa, Honduras, which is the capital of Honduras,
Okay.
and migrated here to the United States as a young child. Folks would call me an unaccompanied minor, but I actually had my mom on the other side waiting for me,
Okay.
and so I've been on the school board, finished my term, did 4 years. I sit on the board of North Carolina Central University, my alma mater. I'm a double Eagle with
Eagle
degree.
Pride.
Eagle Pride,
Yeah.
amplified. I got to do the Eagle. Um,
Yep.
my undergrad and master's as well.
Okay. Okay. And your degree was in what area?
My bachelor's was in chemistry with a minor in biology, and my master's is in earth science.
Okay. Okay. So you're a scientist.
I'm a scientist, and I'm doing my PhD program currently. So hope I'll
Oh,
be Dr. Valladares soon.
awesome. So I'm a little intimidated because I'm talking
No.
to a smart person, but it's gonna be okay. I'm gonna get through it. Not the first smart person that I've talked to, so I try to do my best. So you were on the school board. Talk about what that how that impacts, you know, the local community and why they should be interested in what happens with the school board.
I say, and everybody comments that all politics is local, and I think that local decisions definitely impact communities broadly and widely, and there's one way to understand the intersection of federal policy, state policy, and local policy. You see it all play out in the school board.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I could go endlessly.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said that because that is true. All politics are local. Okay, so you immigrated here from Honduras as a child, and you spent most of your life here in Durham. Okay, understood. So let's address the elephant in the room. We are on the other side of the 2024 presidential election. Um, Yeah, let's just sit with that for a second. Yeah, well, and as everybody well knows, Donald Trump will be inaugurated as the 47th, I believe, president of the United States in January of 2025. Uh, he defeated Kamala Harris. Um, it wasn't as close as people thought it was going to be, and I asked you here because, and I don't. I want to be mindful of my language. So you are what's the appropriate name? So would I say Latino, Hispanic, Latinx? I know Latinx that's made up. I don't even know where that came from. But I know most people say Hispanic or Latino. What do you prefer?
I mean, I identify as Latina,
Okay.
but there's Latina, Latino, Latine, Latinx, and
Right.
Hispanic, and everything else. So I mean,
Right.
and that's a conversation that,
Right.
um,
That's a whole
yeah,
nother
yeah,
can of worms to unpack, right? And
yes,
yeah, as an African American, I kind of realize I don't understand the intricacies in the Latino community. Like I really don't. And that's a knock on me, you know. And I guess it just speaks to us not being interacting culturally as much as we should, because I think these things should be aware to everybody. But you know, getting back to the 2024 election, uh, we saw, you know, I got the numbers here. It says eight in 10 voters in this election were white. So you know, he largely won the white vote. We're just going to talk about race. We're going to go ahead and get it. You know, we're going to address it, the elephant in the room. I'm not going to beat around the bush, because beating around the bush doesn't seem to accomplish very much. So let's just be honest. You know, he got the majority of the white vote. He got a smaller percent. He got a more of the black vote than he got in 2020, and he got a substantial amount of the Hispanic vote. So you being Latina, Hispanic, I wanted to have you on to speak about what you think drove that, the increase in, you know, Latino men came in higher than Latino women, but they both were, it was an increase in both. And just talk about what you think drove that.
Yeah, I think, and we're talking about national data because, you know, Durham's data of Latinos, I'm really curious, you know, to get that data disaggregated
Mm-hmm.
by race, by, you know, and when it comes to Latinos, we're not a monolith. So, I mean,
Right.
if you're talking about Afro Latinos, Indigenous Latinos, white Latinos, you know, Asian Latinos, like you have like all like, and
Right.
multiracial. I mean, I'm multiracial. I've never done a 23andMe, but I can tell you that, I mean, my land is the land of the diaspora. It's
Right.
also the colonizers, and it's the land of indigenous peoples as well. So, but I will say that this national data, this graph that you have up here, when I saw this, I just personally grieved because I did not expect those numbers to be what they were.
Right.
And that is a national trend. And I will also tell you that if we go down the rabbit hole of like the history of policy, like US policy, like who actually gets to vote, it's citizens, right? Like citizens,
Right.
American citizens. And when you think about the working class and you think about like, I tell folks, I jumped the fence. I was an unaccompanied minor, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, I've been able to be one of the lucky ones that actually could vote. I'm actually a citizen, but that's not the case for a lot of folks. And when you think about solidarity and the movements of solidarity,
Right.
it's, you know, you don't want to be asking people, are you a citizen or are you not? But I mean, it comes down to who can vote. And most of the people who can vote are folks who have been able to navigate those channels of
Right.
selectivity. And believe me, those channels are all about privilege. And you have to be able to show, you know,
Wow.
that you can navigate that. I mean, folks who come with a visa, their visa expires, they might be able to apply,
Right.
you know, and be able to fast track their documentation,
Mm-hmm.
fast track their way.
Right.
We are we're an economy of labor. And
Yep.
so some folks, it's not all folks, but there's some specialized labor. And
Yeah.
believe me, that is not Central America where I come from. That
Right.
is, you know, you will not have specialized labor, those very privy visas that they have.
Right.
They're not coming from Honduras. They're not coming. I mean, they're bringing folks, you know, immigrants from Europe,
Understood.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
From
Yeah.
Asia. And so we have to be able to like understand that we have had policies in the United States that have allowed some people to fast track. And for example, the Cuban community in Florida, right? Like
Mm-hmm. Right.
you talk about the policies of wet foot, dry foot,
Right.
and all those policies that were supposed to help folks get an upper hand who had
Right.
actually, you know, left Cuba. And so
Right.
those folks had, you know, had opportunities to become, to
And,
get in.
and the Cuban community in Miami, correct me if I'm wrong, is largely anti-Castro. You know, there are people that Castro didn't want, you know, were cast out. We saw Scarface. You know, that's, you know, that's the thing I use for a reference. It may be a little naive to do so, but like, yeah, they're capitalists. You know,
They
and
embrace capitalism for the most part in terms of like, you know, when they polled them about their politics, and they tend to be very conservative. They tend to
yes,
be very anti-socialism, anti-communism because they come from a communist country. They also tend to be some of the wealthy families, because there's a whole history. And I actually have been to Cuba. I traveled to Cuba, and I
Hmm.
was able to go to the museum and learn about the folks who were very wealthy in Cuba, who had, were really well-to-do, who
Hmm.
left Cuba once, Castro came in, and we're also in the operation of like taking children, and there was a policy about like young kids
Hmm.
leaving and going there's cases when I was growing up in Miami. I was growing up in Miami, and El Caso de Elias. Elias was a young kid who, um,
Right.
so we can go endlessly on this. But
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
guess my point about is that who can vote?
Right,
Those numbers, like who are the
right.
faces of that?
And
Because
there's a method they use to keep, I think that, they know enough. And when I say they, I'm talking about those who, are in charge of the process. They know who is probably, more apt to vote for the stuff like that, and who that's important to. It's been numerous examples of, how they manipulate, gerrymander, and do all kinds of things to manipulate the vote. So let me ask you another question. Being that Kamala Harris was a woman, I know, my understanding is that Latino culture is male driven and may be chauvinistic to an extent, if I'm not being disrespectful. How much do you think of a factor do you think that was in this turnout?
I think it played a huge role. I actually think it played a really huge role. Um, I will tell you that when you have the intersection of the chauvinism, as you mentioned it, but it's patriarchy, right? It's
Right,
patriarchal societies. That's not how they were before colonizers, because indigenous cultures have a lot of respect for women.
right.
And when it comes to any indigenous, you have to go way back in history to understand the
That's
actual
true.
values of a country, before it was a country, or even before it was like colonized. And so, but since colonization, and keep in mind, I come from Honduras. We were a banana republic. We
Right.
were the place that was extracted, where they brought the
The puppet dictators, yeah, and
yeah,
bought in corporations to exploit the land and
yes,
the people. Yeah,
the
like
corporations, yes. And when you think about Banana Republic and that legacy, what did that do? It completely exploited and oppressed the men. It
right,
stepped on the men. It made them feel like this small, and
right,
they were actually, akin to what happened here in this land,
right.
with
It's
black
the same.
people
It's the same system.
enslaved, right? It's
Yep, yep,
the same, and also disrespecting men and calling them boys. Same thing was going on over there, where they were like
yep.
being disrespected by the corporations who had their bread and had the money. And
Yep.
actually, there's historical um, documentation that many times they were not even paid money; they were actually given liquor. They were told, we're not going
Right.
to pay you, but we're going to give you this liquor that comes from overseas that you've never tried. So this
Exactly.
way of completely curtailing the bread for families
Yeah.
affected, and bringing alcoholism, like trends for alcoholism, men who would go home and dominate their wives, treat them
Right.
like, they want to be treated like a king because they were just stepped on over there.
Right.
So the patriarchy, patriarchal societies, the lack of respect for women is actually something that is indicative of colonizing, of the colonizers, of oppression. And I will say that we are, in many Latin American countries, um, we are very colonized, and so we have to
Absolutely.
continue to liberate. Like liberation theology is so important, because our young boys are growing up to want to be the man, but they
Right.
don't feel like the man in the schools. They're getting suspended. They're being
Right.
told they're bad kids, they're bad students, and so this level of oppression is actually continuing to exacerbate this level of misogyny, this
Right.
level of not respecting women, because men want to be the men. They want to
Yep.
be the man, and they see this man who's getting away with everything. He's a
Yep.
convict. He's president. It doesn't
Right.
matter. He did fraud.
Right.
He's
And they
president.
want they aspire to be powerful like that. So they identify. Yeah, you're making a lot of sense. And I think it was Frantz Fanon who said,
Well,
the oppressed.
that's the one we were talking about, Franz Fanon, with brother Paul, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. The oppressed always take on the worst characteristics of the oppressor.
that's right.
Yeah. So, yeah, and it's and I think there's a difference between people of Hispanic descent, like the generations, like if they were born here, their parents were born here. From what I'm seeing from the outside looking in, it's like, okay, we are here and we have ours. We don't really care about anybody else that's trying to come in, shame on them. They didn't get it. I did. And that's interesting to me, because I know from my perspective and from the African American perspective, I don't have any issues with anybody trying to make their life better. I'm always of the opinion that the problem is not poor people. The problem is the people making the people poor. We're talking about banana republics. There's a great podcast called Throughline. They did an episode on the king of bananas, from United Fruit.
Yeah,
Um,
United Fruit
that's
was the company.
yeah. And there's another book by Smedley D. Butler called Wars of Racket. He talked about how they went to Costa Rica with Tampico, and the documentation is there. And the point is, it's the same system being used against darker skinned people by people of European descent everywhere you go on earth. So my hope or wish is that all of the people, regardless of the language you speak, if you're a melanated person, you should realize that you're being oppressed by the same group. And relatively speaking, it's a small group, right?
That's right.
It's a relatively small group. If we would, and I know, I identify Latino people as people of African descent, because I believe in the out of Africa theory. So, and I'm a Pan Africanist and a Black nationalist. So, I believe, like you said before, the diaspora. So,
Right.
it's just like what I think, and I'm gonna speak for Black people right now, and I normally don't do that. I think we kind of feel like, well, wow, Hispanic men don't mess with us. A lot of them, over half of them don't, because what Trump represents and what the Republican Party has become is blatantly racist. And he said racist things about the Latino community. So it's confusing as African Americans to say, how can y'all but we don't understand that. And I saw an Instagram post I wanted to put up. A lady was saying Dominicans don't like Cubans and Cubans don't like Puerto Ricans, and I didn't know. I wasn't aware of how deep that is. If you yeah.
But it's the same thing. I mean, you think about this notion of gangs, right? Like, they're bringing gangs. No, we're not. The U.S. exported the gangs. The gang started in the United States. That was a product. That is a U.S. product.
Right.
From the mafias all the way from New York, all the way to the West Coast.
Right.
And so you had Latin Kings. Like, where did all this, like MS-13, La 18, like all these gangs started in LA, and they were deported back to our countries that didn't have a lot of infrastructure to actually fight it off. And so then you had the police being scared of the gang members, they just came from the US and they know all the things, so we have to really, I think the US has not taken ownership of the condition, the actual condition that folks live in here. Like, I'm going to tell you, for immigrant folks, what they see when they come here. They work hard, they're in the kitchen, they're trying to do what they're trying to do. And anybody who messes up, the first person who gets a DUI, their picture gets plastered all over national news as an embarrassment. Look at Latinos. Look, this Latino man.
Absolutely.
He represents all of us, right? And so it's like there's internalized hatred, that's what oppression does. We start trying to, almost dissociate, well, I'm not that kind of Latino. I'm a good Latino, the good and bad, that kind of dichotomy, which is
the myth of the exceptional, in the Black community, it's the myth of the exceptional Negro. You're not like the rest of them. You're a good one. And we keep coming back to it's the same system being enacted on us all. So it's the Black men and Black men came in. Let me see. So the Black vote was 8% lower for Harris than it was for Joe Biden in 2020, and about 21% of Black men voted for Trump. And I don't know what in the hell's wrong with them either. And I'm just, excuse my language. I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what's wrong with y'all. and they acted like it was funny, or like their favorite team won or something. I'm like, this is not what that is. This is different. Like, and some people said it it was because of the stimulus and the PPP. Um, if that's your reason, okay. But I can guarantee you, whatever you get in that, whatever type of payment you get, you're gonna pay way more. It's gonna cost. It's gonna be a cost associated with anything you think you're about to get. So, I don't co-sign that. And I know, and if you go down into this graph, it shows you by age group, and so it was younger. It was younger
Younger
black men.
and
Um,
Latinos.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I guess that's the. I don't know. I don't. It's a disconnect somewhere. Um,
There's definitely a disconnect, and I grieve it because you know what this brings to mind, like why have our people not realized their own power? I think that they see a man who's getting away with everything. They see him as powerful, and they see him getting away with being just a misogynist, being all the
you
things
name it.
that you name it. And so, like, since when, like, our young people, they're starving for, you know, different things, like, being able to get ahead in life,
Right,
especially
right,
those who, when you're 18, you just graduated from high school. Many of our black and brown students who graduate at 18, and I see this, and this is very personal to me, don't
right,
even know what the next plan is. And the reason why is because we're talking about colleges being completely inaccessible. They fought affirmative action. They've gutted. They're trying to gut
right,
everything. So where is a black and brown young man looking to, right? And so looking for business. So it becomes a business. And if you go on and you start, your algorithm starts tracking that you're looking at businesses on TikTok or
right,
Instagram, one of the first things that comes is books like 48 Laws of Power. What is that? That is like,
right.
the kind of book that tells you pretty much it's like Trump's ideology. I'm pretty sure that this man who's now president was
Right.
reading that garbage, like reading it left and right about how
Yeah.
to dominate, how to use, how to extract, and did
Yes.
not understand the principles of reciprocity that are actually what has actually allowed
Right.
millennia people to thrive. And that's what we are working on. Like you and I, brother Paul, activists in Durham, like it has been about reciprocity. Like how do we look out for one another? And I think there's more opportunities for us to do that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
these
It definitely is. Yeah.
these
Yeah. We
people that
just we
play
just
about
have to. Yeah. We have to. Like, this country promotes the idea of rugged individualism. You know what I mean? And materialism.
that's right.
And we are continuously bombarded with ideas of what success looks like. And I often say we need to redefine what success is. Success is not necessarily getting a big house and moving away from the hood. It's um success is making sure your family is healthy mentally, and building a legacy, something. That's what wealthy people do. They leave inheritance for their children. Most of us don't have anything to leave, and that's not an accident. It's been done through systems and institutions. They've it's multiple examples of them putting up artificial barriers so that we cannot compete financially. You know, Black people are a perfect example. Like, we were slaves and then we were free with nothing, and then we gained political power. And ironically, today is the 10th of November, which is the anniversary of the Wilmington Massacre.
Yes.
Once we got power, um, they burned it down and ran us out of town. And then they say, why can't you help yourself? Well, when we did help ourselves, you destroyed it.
Yeah.
And that's not hyperbole. That really happened.
That really did happen. And I think about history and stories of people rising up. They don't want people to rise up. And so this data just shows that they're being successful, because when black and brown people can't work together towards a common cause, towards a person who can represent the interests of the people who have been disenfranchised in this country, when you have that kind of division, I mean, they're
That's
winning.
right.
And so the way that individualism is presented, it's everybody's out to make their money, live in the nice house, be disconnected from community. The moment that
Yes.
we get disconnected from community, we start seeing our own people as others. And so you were mentioning that immigrants who are here who become citizens, they start looking at some of the undocumented immigrants, working class immigrants, as like, a nuisance. It's like, no more. Like, I made it.
Right,
We don't need
right,
any more,
right,
because it's this fear of seeing your brother rise up, or seeing like more people become a problem to the system and rock the boat, so to
right.
speak.
Well, do you think they think that they are equal to someone like Trump?
I will tell you that they're picking the side that they think is going to feed them tomorrow, and that is just the thing.
Mm,
It's the mentality of I think it's the dependent mentality. It's almost like we better be in the good
wow.
graces of like the white gays. It's been research shows it. People want white people to like them, right? Especially
Right,
people who have experienced
right,
oppression. They want to be on the side. They want to be, if it's a white boss, oh my gosh, I better be on
right.
the good side. Like everybody wants to be, because it's power. It's the positionality.
That's
A
deep.
lot of people that are in power are white, and
No,
so
no. At the highest levels of power, they're all white.
at the highest levels. But in places like Durham, it's so powerful to see
Yeah,
Durham have black leaders. I was the
yeah.
first Latina on the school board. Never before had there been a Latina or
Wow, I
Latino
didn't
or
know that.
Latine or anything before then. So
Wow.
it's
Okay.
like, to break that, it was a very important for me to
Right,
represent my people. And when I got there, I told him unabashedly, I was like, I was an ESL student. I had to learn English. It
right,
was hard for me. English is my second language. It's not my first language.
right.
And so people still ask me where I'm from every single time. So it's like, I've been here for a long time, and there's still people who like want to, send me back,
Right,
So-
right, 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 right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's the thing. Like, that's my fear is we're more divided than ever, and this administration promotes division. And I'm really fearful of. I'm not worried about Trump coming and doing anything to me. I mean, I'm a citizen. I'm not a criminal. I'm not worried about my door being kicked in or anything like that. I'm worried about the interpersonal interactions that we have to all go through every day,
every
and
day.
and how this has changed that. And so, I was when I saw the numbers come in, I was like, you know I go to the store. I mean, Durham is it's largely Hispanic, and I see Hispanic people all the time, and I treat them the same way. I'm looking at them as brothers and sisters, and I see these numbers, and I'm like, wow,
They're not Durham's numbers, but they're the national numbers, So, but
yeah,
but I will say that there are. So I personally have had to distance myself because I am Honduran and I love Honduran food, and
right,
so it's like, and I love Latin food,
right,
but I have
me
been
too.
very intentional about asking, who are you voting for? Like, what
Wow,
are your politics? And believe me, I've uncovered quite a bit, and so um, it's important for us to know, like, we not only vote with our on the ballots, like we vote with our money. Like,
right,
what businesses deserve our money. And I will tell you this, I'm going to tell you this, that after the election that day, I was so sad. Like, when I learned what had happened, I stayed up and I was still like in disbelief. I was in denial. Then I hardly didn't even sleep. And then I was still like,
same,
it was
same,
kicking in.
same.
It was kicking in.
Yeah.
It was kicking in, and it kicked in, and it felt very painful just to realize,
And
that
I'm
there's
not laughing at you. I'm
there's
I'm laughing because I was in the same state. I could not sleep. Yeah, I
it
could not
was it
sleep.
was it was hard. It was hard. And so that morning I got up and I needed to get my car inspection done. And I went to a black business, Mr. Francis. And
Hmm.
Mr. Francis doesn't even know me, right? But I'm like, I was so happy to see him. And I was like, I am supporting a black business. I am supporting a business that like it was just
Right,
so wonderful to even say hi to him. And then I went to another place, and it was like there was another lady who I was like, you see me, right? Like we're going through the same things. Like I could see like the people, I could
right.
see the people who are grieving. See,
Yeah,
I can see the people who are of the same heart. I can see the
yeah.
people who are feeling that this is not
Yeah,
right. How do
right.
we choose a man who's when, how do we choose a man who is like a federal, uh,
34 convicted felon. Yeah, yeah,
convicted
yeah, yeah,
felon?
yeah.
And he's
I had to go into the office, and it was tough. And I really debated on going in, but like, and most of my coworkers are European or white, but they seem to be, at least they fooled me if they weren't grieving. They seem to be grieving, but you know, that's a we can put a lot of blame on our respective groups, but at the end of the day, more than half of the white people voted for them, and that's the, you know
And the
Like,
women, white women. So
right,
you know what?
right,
As many the feminist
right,
movement is what white, right? It's white women who
right.
feminist movement, and then they're
Yeah,
uh,
but it's feminist for them. They don't necessarily include other groups when they talk
they don't
about
include other
feminism.
groups, and that's a whole nother thing, about like how white the feminist movement is. But these white feminists who talk about, when with the pussy hats, you remember
Right.
the little pink hats?
Absolutely.
I'm
Absolutely. I
just
posted
like,
it.
and now
I
they're trying to
posted it
wear blue
earlier.
bracelets. I'm
Yeah.
just like,
Right. Right. The blue bracelets now.
but
Like,
it
get
is
the
just it is
get the
just
fuck out of here with the blue bracelet. Like, get out
whew.
of my face because you smile and see. This is the thing. This is, there's a thing called the Bradley effect, named after Mayor Bradley from L.A. Where he thought he was leading by a lot in the polls because people weren't answering the polls honestly because they were scared they were going to be called racist, and that's exactly what I think happened here. Because so I realized they can interact. A lot of them, I'm not gonna say all, can interact with you and talk to you like you have common interests, political or otherwise, and they'll turn right back around and go in the booth and vote for what we have.
That's something else that when I think about education and how much we care about education, and yet it's under the powers of Republicans. It's like, how in the world the teachers, because the teachers in North Carolina, do they see what I'm seeing? They see it. They see the reading levels of Black and brown children falling
Right,
below where
right,
it's supposed to be. They
right,
talk about how much they care about the children, and they
right,
want more resources. We need more books, we need computers, we need every child to have a laptop, a
right,
one-to-one district. Everybody was talking about that, and yet the politics of who's voting, it's like, how many teachers are connected to families? How many of them are supporting education? And yet they keep voting against
right, right, right.
you know
Yeah, yeah, and we know. I know that. Like, just talking about local or state anyway, we know that public education in this state's been under attack for a long time.
yes,
For a long time.
long time.
They want everything privatized. And interestingly enough, and this is another thing that was interesting in the election. So Josh Stein won handily, and
Yes,
that's so.
we have a Democratic governor.
We have a Democratic governor. Thank God for small favors. And that will offer us some protection at the state level. Yeah, and we had quite a bit in the House. I think we
Yeah,
won the Democrats won. I ain't gonna say we because I'm a registered independent, but I tend to side with the Democrats because the Republicans are just crazy. So but I don't want to be beholden to either party. I'm beyond that at this point. But I'm not insane. Um, yeah, so that tells me that a lot of people may not have even voted for the president. They just voted down ballot. Because Josh Stein, it was over early.
yeah.
And I'm glad that he won. And I hope that
But that also just shows you, though, why did he win? If we analyze why he won, like usually it's not with a landslide. It's not as direct as that. It's because there was a candidate, the Republican candidate, a Black man who had a
right,
list of scandals, and yet
right.
they were easy to throw the Black man, saying, we don't want Mark Robinson. I mean, I didn't want him either, but you know
I
what I
didn't
mean?
either. But yeah, and
But
Mark,
it's
bless
kind of
his
a
heart.
contrast, right?
Yeah, bless Mark's heart. He thought that he could behave in the same way Trump did.
As Trump did, but he
And
doesn't have
that's not true. That's not
skin.
true.
He's not white. Oh my gosh, that is the thing.
And
See,
at the end of the day, I think what we know is it's because one, Kamala was black, and two, she was a woman. It may not be that order. It may be the reverse. It may be because she was a woman and she was black. But we know that's why she lost.
the feminist movement in the United States is dead because if you look at those numbers, women, especially white women, voted for a man who grabs the. He says he
Grab
grabs.
somebody, you know what? Yeah, let me bring it back up so we can just we can know what we're talking about.
So feminists in the United States
Yeah,
overwhelmingly
right,
supported.
right. And then came out sex by race, white women, 53%, white men 60%. That's over half. And so if they were 8 and 10, you know, that's a lot. That's like 100 million. That's like 100 million votes. That's a lot. Yeah. So I saw Stacey Abrams on an Instagram post earlier, and she said they voted for their comfort and profit, you know, over anything else. That's all they were concerned with. And I think that's probably right on the money. They don't care about how other people are treated as long as they're 401, not 401ks, their trusts, because we're talking about trust fund people. As long as that's not affected and the inheritance tax doesn't hit, their children too bad, what have you. Go
The
ahead.
question that comes to mind is, does America love Black and brown children?
No.
And we know that we know that they don't. But it's like, when I think about folks who are voting for a platform, a campaign that is going to gut Head Start, who wants to, like, what sense does
Who
that
would
make?
take that away? Who would take that away?
Head
What?
Start has been a great program for many years, and to say that it is, one of the things to be on the table, to be gutted, like,
Right,
that really made me think, like, do people not understand
right.
that, you
And
know,
and the majority of these percentages are not wealthy. So they're just like we're all the same. We're all voting against our interests. The black men that voted for Trump, the Latino men that voted for Trump, the Latino women, and the poor white people. And when I say poor, let me qualify. If you have to work, you're not wealthy, because you cannot pass on your job to your children. Okay. So you're not wealthy. So when Donald Trump talks about tax breaks for the wealthy, he's not talking about you. And guess who's going to pay for it? You.
that's
So
who always for everything, like,
right. The
yeah.
working class who we're talking about,
How much did Trump pay in taxes?
we I don't know that he's paid anything. Because he doesn't but no rules apply to him. Let's just be clear. Anything,
The highest office, yeah, you have that
yeah,
level of.
anything, like, you can pick any one thing from any week that he's been in the political spirit that should disqualify him, but nothing has. And he rules by fear. And I don't understand why people fear him, because you're from Durham, I'm from Durham. You think Donald Trump's ever been in a fist fight?
I can't even imagine that. He would not make it in the streets. I would tell you, like,
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Can you see him going down Holloway Street at
oh,
night?
he's not going to go to the Mac either. Like, he'll be on the side of NCCU claiming he went to the Mac. He'd be like, I went to the Mac, because
Right.
he's on Lawson Street.
He's not, but he's wealthy. And I grew up, I grew up in the 70s. I was born in the 70s. I grew up in the 80s. I'm a child of Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. Robin Leach. You're probably too young to know that, but you can probably find on YouTube. It was a show called Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, where this guy named Robin Leach, he was a British guy, champagne wishes and caviar dreams. He went around and interviewed all the rich people, and that's kind of the culture we have. We all worship wealthy people. We worship rich people, whether they have redeeming qualities or not.
It's where people aspire to be. It's kind of like, live like the rich, talk like the rich, act like the rich.
Right.
And
And maybe
this
you'll
is the
become
worst
rich.
possible example you want to give to kids. They're very impressionable, and so they're looking at,
Yeah.
how the rich live, how the other side lives, and they're seeing all these things. So that's what it must take to be cool. And
Yeah.
that's not exactly, because we saw, as I mentioned, anybody who even dare do a fraction of what he has done, if they are not his pigment and his
Right.
privilege.
Right. It's clear. It's clear that he's a racist. It's clear that, look, we can talk about Charlottesville, and that's what's giving me anxiety. I'm like, okay, and we saw there was a article today in WRL. They said a hate group hung a sign at American Tobacco campus.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
And I'm like, okay, that's what I don't. That's what we don't really need. We don't need people who hold racist views emboldened to express them. Somebody
At the
said,
schools at Northern, I had that very first day, moms were calling me and telling me that their children were trying to get into the school, to
right,
Northern High School, and there was a truck out there with Trump signs, and they were all like with the celebration, and it actually bordered on intimidation because the students who were passing by was starting to cry. You know,
Right.
they're like,
Right.
wanting to come to school. Why would you bring that to Northern High School, knowing the demographics of Northern High School, knowing how
Exactly.
many Latino
Exactly.
kids, and what
And
percentage of
that's what I'm
Latino
saying.
kids have families that are mixed status. Some of are undocumented, some are fully undocumented, some might have maybe one or two relatives that are undocumented, you know?
Right. Right.
And then I also got, you know, the messages I think we've all seen on social media, you know,
The
including
text.
public school students like getting messages saying that they're about to be deported, you know, and all kinds of different variations of those messages that went
Right.
out.
Right. Oh yeah.
Targeted.
And one said that you were supposed to report to a plantation to pick cotton. Black kids got that. Yeah. Yeah. I saw the story. And you know, sticks and stones, right? Sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. But that's not true.
That's not true.
Words hurt.
Bullying kills.
Yeah, and we're in a different environment than I grew up in because we have social media now, and so everything is amplified.
Magnified, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like you know, is that I mean, I can't say this is the other thing. Like we just need to admit, like we're in a white supremacist country and race trumps everything else. Like, but you know, I thought I hoped we were better than that. And I think that's some of the problem everybody's having. We're all disappointed that we're exactly who we thought we were.
We have to analyze it, and we have to start seeing where the money is going to influencers that are perpetuating misogyny, racism, prejudice. I mean, who's paying them?
Absolutely.
That's the thing. We have a young Black man who's an influencer, another Latino man who's like an influencer, and then they're who's paying, who's lining their pockets to say some denigrating, about your community.
Right.
Say
Steve
like,
Bannon. It's probably Steve Bannon or Roger Stone or one of the
kids are not going to follow Steve. You know, I mean, like the white kids might because their families do, and maybe some of them. But like,
no, I'm just saying the money. I'm saying the money probably is coming. The money's probably coming from somebody like that, Karl Rove, or somebody like that. It's one of those options. Because I did hear that the Republican Party spent a lot of money in the Black influencer space to get them to talk, and that's where some of that crazy stuff was coming from. But like,
it was effective.
It was. But that's why I stress reading and learning how to analyze and think critically and know, and piece to Brother Paul, sources, know your sources because what I saw happening was people heard somebody say something and then they just started saying it. They didn't even know where it came from. Joe Rogan, like it was an article right after the election where Hamas called for the end to the war. Joe Rogan, who's the biggest podcaster in the world, posted it thinking that it was saying Hamas surrendered. When you open the article, it was saying that they were calling for Israel to stop doing what they were doing. They didn't even read. Only thing he read was the headline, and I saw it over and over and over again. People posting, and I'm like, we in trouble because, like, we know that there are bad actors trying to influence. Like, how many times have they said that? You know, they said Russia influenced this election. But you'll never get no details.
It takes years to kind of figure out, follow that trail of like hackers, because they've been involved before. Russian hackers
they definitely were involved in 2016.
Take a while, but maybe less time. I don't know, but I will say that there's the perception that has been perceptions have been affected by saying, oh, look at the price of these things, look at the price of that, without the context, right? That we went through a pandemic and so many other things that have changed, that we're never going to have gas that is $1. We're never going to have eggs that are like 25 cents, or 50 cents for a carton of eggs. And so there's this notion that look how hard it is to live. Look how hard it is to live. But that's been the case.
That right? Trump has very little influence on that, and any president. You don't understand how economics works if you think that, and what has Donald Trump proposed that he's going to do to rectify it, and what did he do the first time? Obama said clearly that he took credit for Obama's economy, and he did.
He did.
And then at the end we had COVID. Yeah, and then at the end we had COVID, and he didn't handle that. He told us to shine a light and up our, culo and drink bleach. He did. I saw it.
We saw what it was when he left office, and then what Biden had to deal with in terms of the economy. And I will say that economists and all folks have talked about like policies and things that they've tried to implement, to starve off a depression,
Right.
or a crash, a complete crash. I mean, they've been holding it, but
Yeah.
I think it's a matter of time. We will see in a matter of time what happens to the economy, and we're going to come back. I want to come back to these Latinos who thought that Trump was going to get them those eggs at $1, or like
Hmm.
the milk gallons were going to be $2 again. I'm
Yeah.
going to come back to them and say, because the economy right now, they've been holding it. The
Yeah.
President Biden, and
Yeah.
also
No, it's not as bad as people think it is.
not as bad.
It's
But I'm
not.
telling you, it's not what it was in when he came in 2016 after Obama, right?
Right.
It's not what it was then, and so
Right.
it's a
Right.
little more vulnerable, I would say. And
Yeah.
so I just know, Trump coming into office is just bad news,
Yeah. I
especially for the
mean, history shows that when the Republicans Party leaves office, the economy is in shambles. It was in
yes.
shambles when George W. Bush left. It was in shambles when his daddy left. History shows that. I don't know why, um, but I guess they just think that when Trump takes over, they're going to be wealthy and none of this stuff is going to affect them anymore. So they won't need social programs.
I'll tell you one thing that makes me sad, because coming from a tradition of faith, there are a lot of people who are praying for President-elect Trump, and they've been praying for him because they say that he talks about the Bible, and he unabashedly says, or mentions that he's a son of God, or like he's connected to people. And it's just interesting because we've gotten to the point where, when it comes to faith movements and people who are putting their good cause, their good prayers.
Mhm.
Um, I'm not going to go down the whole and
No,
down
go ahead.
there
Feel
saying,
free. Speak freely.
but I'm just saying, when it comes to imagine what those prayers would do for a person who wants to do good, for this country, for the people,
Right.
who wants to respect women.
Right.
Imagine what those prayers and those supports. I mean, churches have been in the pulpits. People have been from the pulpits have been pretty much like
Absolutely. I
saying
mean, the,
saying,
the
saying that
evangelicals love him. They absolutely love him.
it is
And
sad. It makes me so sad, because it's like that's not what walking by faith is. That's not an example of walking by faith, or Christ-like. It's
yeah, and it calls the whole thing into question. It calls what you say you believe in, because you gotta, like James Baldwin said, you want me to take the how did he say that? I can't remember now. You want me to take the deed over the act or the want, you know what I mean? So you want me to assume that you follow this tenet, or these principles, but your actions show something different, is what I'm trying to say. So like, it basically it's hypocrisy at the
it's
end of the day. It's hypocrisy. You don't I was raised in the church, in the United Methodist Church. You don't love your neighbor like you love yourself. You don't treat others the way you want them to treat you. You couldn't stand the way you treat black and brown people for 24 hours. Eddie Murphy he did it when he became white, so it was different. I was gonna say he did a skit back when he was on SNL. Where he turned into a white man. He was like, they were just giving him money. He went to the bank and stuff like that. But they couldn't, in reverse, they couldn't, I don't think they can handle it, because I see, the stress that they do have and how they deal with that. So like what we deal with is exponentially worse, because we're subjugated, second class, or it's a caste system.
and something that we didn't touch is this fear that what's really hurting America, and I say it like that, is folks' identities expanding.
Mhm.
I find that so troublesome, in the sense that that is what's taking away your food, that's what's taking away your job, that's what's taking away your rights. Like,
Right.
folks being able to identify any kinds of way. I didn't no we have imagine if they were saying that ethnicities couldn't be identified. Like I was Latina, I could have, I would be Mexican, right? Because
Right.
everybody, there was a time when the classification was so narrow that if you were Latina, you were Mexican. That's it.
Right. That's it. That's it.
No,
That's
it's
all you
not
could
even
be.
Mexican. And I
Yeah.
was like, I'm Honduran. And I was like, oh, there's a Mexican right there. I was like, I'm from Honduras. And
Right.
it took a while. And now people are like, okay, so where are you from? Or
Right.
like,
Right.
and they might say that they visited other places beyond Mexico. They've gone to maybe
Right.
Nicaragua or whatever. So that's just expanded the knowledge about
Mm-hmm.
people and about
Mm-hmm.
ethnicities and the nuance of like differences and diversity and
Right.
what foods are the same. The same thing with identity. When folks want to identify in many different ways, how is that affecting your money? How is that affecting your ability? Because I will tell you that one of the things that has been important to talk about this work is the intersectionality of the oppression on race, class, sexual orientation,
Mm-hmm.
the gamut, like country of
Right.
origin, like it's compounded. Every
Right.
single layer just compounds more. And so I'm telling folks, like, you said that you wanted to make sure schools didn't indoctrinate your kids.
Right.
My goodness, like, as a school board member, I can tell you, like, there's curriculum including sex ed that doesn't happen,
Mm-hmm.
in kindergarten, first, second, or third. So even the supposition that there's conversations that are being talked about and
Right.
kids are being groomed, it's almost like, do you know when sex education happens in the school district?
No.
Like, you know,
Yeah.
so
No, they don't. No,
they
they
don't
don't.
know. And so I
But
had to, like, many times share the policy of, like, this is when it happens. And it's not something that is affecting K through third, but they just don't want even the conversation that there are diverse families, and that touches a whole different thing that we don't have time for right now.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's
And they say they don't want you to indoctrinate them, but they want prayer in schools. So there's another that's the indoctrination, because you only want one religion's prayers. You don't want others. You don't want the Muslims, and you don't want you know Ju- Judaism or what have you. So like they pick and choose. And what at the end of the day, to me, what they're basically saying is whatever we say is the way. You have to. Everybody else has to assimilate to our way, and that's not the way the world should be. We should be sharing and taking the best from each group and making it better for everybody. That's
making
what
it
I
better for everybody. I think about separation of church and state, which is kind of like what's affecting, this whole conversation about prayer in schools and all that. Like, I tell folks, like, Christian groups have been allowed, like, there's Christian, like, focus groups or student groups where, they can meet with teachers. And I remember when I was in school, I would go to one of those groups and sit in, and, we were able to read the Bible after. But when it comes to, like, this whole notion of, um, wanting the schools to teach religion or teach
right.
it in such a way that it uh, presents Christianity as the religion. Like,
Right.
that is, they want
That's
the
not
history books. They want the history books to not mention the African religions that came, of the enslaved, the religions of the enslaved, the Yoruba traditions. Like, they don't want none of that mentioned.
no, exactly. And so you're getting a distorted view of history. So your population, your school age population, is being misinformed, and so you get what we have now.
Yeah.
As far as the election, you get people that are basing their, it seems to me it's always like, these are my marbles, you can't have any. This is mine here, and you can't have. You have to get your own. Like, it's so much of a fear that something is being taken away. And I just don't. I'm not of the philosophy that in order for me to have what I need, it has to be a detriment to you. It's enough. It's enough for everybody.
There's enough for everybody. I want to just share, for the folks who might be listening to this. If you're a Black or brown person, if you're a Latina, or Latino, Latine, whoever, Hispanic, who voted for Trump, um, I also just want to just name that there's some people who felt like they wanted to do they wanted to make the choice that was closer to, if you're a religious person, to God, or to, godliness. We know that that's the farthest. We know that the example, the walk, and the talk do not go in the same direction. Like,
It's
and
not.
and
It's not Christ. It's not Christ-like. It's not
it is
any
not
any
Christ-like. It is
any
not the walk of
deity you
Christ.
want to name. It's not. No, this is not what they did.
And
But
folks want to do the right thing. They want to do the right thing. And so we have ongoing conversations about abortion, ongoing conversations about LGBTQ rights, especially like trans rights. There's ongoing. I mean, these conversations are going to continue to happen. Folks who don't understand, folks who want more, maybe more education about things. But I will say this: that if you're one of those folks who voted for this man, and you wanted to do the right thing, you thought that that was the right thing because you want to protect, I don't know, there's so many delusions as to what he's supposed to represent. He's supposed to represent your kids are going to be safe when he's actually known to have, I'm not even going to go there, there's so
Yeah,
much that I
yeah,
can go to.
yeah.
So
It
what I'm
is.
saying is that I hear part of me is angry. Like I did have anger, but I also have um just grieving. Like I'm grieving, and I'm also trying to make sure that we have these conversations. So I don't want people to just shut up and not talk about why they did that. Like I actually want to hear from people who voted for Trump.
Right.
What was it that made it so that they would actually vote for this man? I want to learn that. I want to be able to have those conversations. So I'm just putting an invitation out there
Okay.
that
Okay.
I will do my best, because I'm a praying woman. I will pray and just be like, have the patience of Job.
Right. Right.
I will
Right.
pray for the patience of Job,
Yeah.
the
But
heart
yeah,
of David. And,
yeah.
because
And if
David
you
is
know
like,
the
my hands
story
are
of
not
Job,
clean. My hands are
yeah,
not clean. He sinned as well. So, the
yeah. If
heart
you
of
know the
David.
story, if you know the story of Job, he wasn't at the end. He wasn't all that patient either. So your patience runs out, even for Job. So
Yeah.
let's just be clear. Um, but yeah, good luck with that. I'm not. I'm not going to extend that invitation. I really, you know, I need some time. I'm
Yeah.
still processing, and I don't want to talk about it, and I don't want to joke about it, and I don't, I just don't want to talk about it right now with you know, with my brothers and sisters that did. I don't want to. I've been unfollowing a lot of people on social media. I need time because it you know, I heard somebody on one of the shows this morning say this would be a change in the direction of American history, and I think they're right. It's going to be different, and I don't say that lightly. But we'll be okay. We'll get through it.
We'll try to. We'll try
Yeah,
to.
well, yeah. I mean, we will. The sun will still continue to rise. Unless
We will see each other's
unless
face.
Elon,
Face
yeah,
down the
unless Elon's got a plan for that.
Oh my gosh. But I will say we have to see more of each other, because I think it's time for
That's a good thing.
accountability, and that accountability is like we have to see each other. Like
Yeah, yeah. You're right. You're right. Yeah. I just need a little time to process it. So yeah, but I'm not gonna isolate myself because that's not good. Thank you so much
thank
for coming on. And we should definitely do this again because there's a lot more we could talk
you. Oh
about that
yeah.
we didn't get to. But yeah, my door is always open. You're always welcome on this podcast. Let people know how they can get in contact with you.
I'm on Facebook, so my name is Alexandra Valladares, and I think it's in the episode. So just reach out, and I might see you around. Like if I'm because I want to be able to see folks and get to see more of the Durham community, even as it changes, which is also another conversation to have about the forces of gentrification, the forces of the
Right.
inflation that we're seeing. There's so much happening. So reach out if you have any questions about running for office as well. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Thank you. And well, I appreciate you, and we'll talk again soon. Have a good night. Thanks
You
again.
too. Thanks so much. Bye
Mhm.
bye.
Peace.